Hi, in this session we'll be finding, deleting and updating objects using Hibernate. But before we do that, let's spend a minute on transactions. So what is a transaction? A transaction is a group of operations that are run as a single unit of work. For example, let's say you're in the business of selling books online and a buyer ordered a book from your bookstore. Now, the way you would want your bookstore application handle that request would be to delete the ordered book and raise an invoice for that as a single unit of work, because if something goes wrong after the line 3 is executed, say your server goes down, you'll end up with one book short in your bookstore without being able to raise the invoice for that. And obviously you would never want that to happen. So what you'd want in that situation is to reverse the changes made by the execution of the line 3 here, as if the line 3 never even executed. So in other words, you'd want the transaction here to roll back. And that's what we get with transactions. Only when the line 6 is executed, changes made in line 3 and 4 here will be visible to other processes or transactions running on the same database. And in case something goes wrong after the line 3 is executed, but before line 4 could execute, any changes made until line 4 here will not be applied to the database. They will be rolled back. And for some reason, if you yourself want to roll back a transaction, you could do that as well. And that's what we're going to do from here onwards in our Java client. We are going to manipulate objects within a transaction, and if something goes wrong during that transaction, we are going to roll back that transaction. Great, now let's go ahead and find a message object using the value of its identifier attribute. So if you've been following along, this is the current state of the message table in the Hello World database. And to find an object using its ID value, you just have to call this get method of the session object, telling it about the type of object that you're looking for and also the ID of the object that you're looking for. And once the line 17 is executed, Hibernate is going to execute this select statement, binding this parameter with the value 2 here, and return a fully populated Java object that just needs to have a typecast to the correct type. So this will be the state of the message object once the line 17 is executed. You'll have a full-blown message object in Java memory. And then we simply continue with the rest of the code here. And you're going to get a null value if Hibernate can't find a message object with a given ID value. Now, just imagine the nightmare you would have gone through had you been using JDBC directly, writing SQL select statement and then populating the message object using the result set. And that's the beauty of Hibernate. Once configured and the required mapping is done, it makes Java persistence so simple. So now that we got a message object using the value of its ID attribute, let's go ahead and update it. So again, we've got the message object by the value of its ID attribute on line number 17 here, and then we are updating its text attribute using its setText method. We did not have this setText method earlier in our message entity, so I just added it. So once the line 18 is executed, the state of the text attribute of the message object will be changed to Hello Automatic Dirty Checking. And once the transaction is committed on line number 20 here, Hibernate is going to execute this update statement and make the modified state of the message object persisted to the message table. And here's the state of the updated message table. What's happening here is that once the transaction is committed, Hibernate is checking whether the state of the message object got dirty or, in other words, got modified during the transaction. And if it finds any modifications, then it executes an update statement to persist those modifications to the database. But if it doesn't find any modifications, then it doesn't execute any update statements. And this is what is called automatic dirty checking. So we don't have to explicitly ask Hibernate to update the database whenever we modify the state of an object inside a transaction. And now that we've seen updating objects, let's move on to deleting objects. And to delete an object, you just have to call the delete method of the session object, passing it the reference of the object you want deleted. Now, you have to know that even when the line 18 is executed, you will still have the state of the message object available in Java memory and also in the message table. Only when the transaction is committed on line number 20 here, you will have this delete SQL statement executed against the Hello World database and have the message with value 2 in its ID column deleted from the message table. So the message with value 2 for its primary key value has been deleted. Now, before I end this session, an important requirement to understand here is that all your persistent entities must have a no argument constructor in them for Hibernate to be able to instantiate objects using Java reflection. So, for example, if you're calling this get method to find a message object with a given ID value without having the no argument constructor in the message entity, Hibernate is going to complain about it in runtime throwing this instantiation exception, telling you that you do not have the no argument constructor in your message entity.